Now, in the last video, we discussed about the DLMS COSAM communication model, and we saw how the data travels from server to client side using application processes and the various DLMS COSAM application layers and the transport IP and the data link layers, and then it is again processed at the client level to receive the data at particular application process. So application processes are nothing but software modules which are responsible to initiate the data transmission. Now let's talk about the connection oriented operation, how the operation happens between the servers and the clients for the data transmission. So basically the DLMS COSAM application layer is connection oriented. We have two types of data transmissions. One is connection oriented and second is connectionless. So in case of connectionless data transmission, device or the application sends data to the other end without initiating any connection request. While in case of connection oriented, first the connection is stabilized, and when the connection is stabilized, the data transmission starts. So communication session consists of three phases in case of the DLMS COSAM. Here first an application layer connection, which is called application association, is stabilized, which is between client and server application entities. So server in our case is the smart meter and client is the head end system at the control center end. So first the application association has to be stabilized between server and the client application entities. Now once the application association is stabilized, the message exchange can take place, and then at the end of data exchange, application association is released. Now suppose you have the confirmed application association between client and server, then how the data transmission happens? First, the client side DLMS APDU will send the service request to the smart meter, then it will get the response from the smart meter, means you will get the required data which is there in the form of APDU. You can also get the data as part of push operation, means in case of pull, the request has to come from the client and the response has to be given by the server. While in case of push operation, the server will keep on sending the required data to the client because you already have the confirmed application association. Now there might be certain cases where the client is sending a service request which meter cannot understand, so that request will be unresolved and pending. Now if you do not have confirmed application association, whatever the request you will raise, this will not be entertained by the smart meter. So these informations you can get from the DLMS COSAM Green Book. Now here the important thing to mention is that the servers cannot initiate the establishment of application associations. That means the smart meters are not designed to initiate the application association. So the client side, that is head end system, has to initiate the application association request. A COSAM logical device may support one or more application associations, each with different client. Each application association determines the context in which information exchange takes place. So you first define the application association, and then what service request you want to be entertained is sent to the server, and the response is received. So the context in which the information exchange takes place will be part of your application association. Now let's talk about the DLMS COSAM server model. So in the smart meter, we have two different types of server models built. One is DLMS COSAM HTLC. In this case, it is using 3 layers and connection oriented architecture. HTLC is nothing but high level data link control. So what will happen in that case, that in case of SDLC based profile, you will have only 3 layers for the implementation. One is application layer, another is the SDLC layer, that is anyway is part of your data link layer, and then the physical layer. So at the application layer, you will have various logical device which will initiate application processes, which will be processed by the DLMS COSAM based application layer, which contains association control service, how the application association will happen, and then the application service element, like what information or what request you want to share or what service you want to implement at the application layer level. Now here you will have the corresponding ports connected at the SDLC layer, where these devices application processes will send or receive the data. SDLC based link layer will process the data, create the corresponding packet, and then send data to the physical layer. At physical layer, again the physical layer header will be added, and then data is sent to the network using any connection ports, and these ports are implementing either RS-232, 485 or optical port, so on. Now through these ports the data goes to the communication network, and then it is shared with the desired client. Now in case of DLMS COSAM meter, which is using TCP/IP or UDP/IP based profile, so here we use the TCP/IP layer. In this layer we will have the application layer, then the transport layer, IP layer, and standard data link, as well as the physical layer. So the advantage of having this kind of architecture is that since we have a standard TCP/IP layer as part of the model, the standard TCP/IP based functions can be realized. Say if you want to use FTP or HTTP in the smart meter, which are required when you want to remotely push the firmware upgrade, or maybe you want to share the data using web services and so on, then you can directly utilize the TCP/IP layer using FTP and HTTP ports. So that information can be easily shared with the lower layers, because those are the standard layers which we see in any computer network. For the logical devices related data communication, we will use the DLMS COSAM specific application layer for that, where the application control service element and the application service element will be utilized to share the data over TCP. Now the standard TCP or UDP cannot understand the DLMS COSAM related information, so we need DLMS COSAM wrapper, so that the information is wrapped as if we are sending the standard TCP or UDP packet. So for that the proper mapping has to be done. So the DLMS COSAM wrapper, which will be part of your TCP layer, will map the application processes for data sharing, and then it will be packed in the TCP packet. Then it will be shared with the standard IP layer, and then here the data link layer will be the standard data link layer. So we need not to implement SDLC based data link layer in this case, where we can utilize the standard data link layer and the standard physical layer for data transmission. Now let's talk about the DLMS COSAM client model. So at the server end, a smart meter can send data using either SDLC based profile or the TCP IP based profile. So at the client level, the application should receive the data communicated through either SDLC based profile or through TCP IP based profile. So you will have multiple receiving ports at the client level, and the client application will receive data from SDLC based meter. So here the again data will be received by the physical layer and it will be shared to the SDLC based data link layer, where this information is directly shared with DLMS COSAM application layer. Similarly, if the TCP IP based model is implemented and the data is being shared by the smart meter having TCP IP based server model, the data will be received by the ports at the physical layer, and then this will be shared to the standard data link layer, then standard IP layer, and then standard TCP or UDP layer. Now here, if the data is standard data which require either FTP or HTTP services, the corresponding port will receive the data for any activity. Or if you want the smart meter related data to be shared with the application layer, then the DLMS COSAM port will be utilized, and through that port this data will be shared with again the DLMS COSAM transport layer, where the corresponding data will be shared with corresponding application processes. So this is how the data is being shared by the smart meter to the head-end system. So head-end system is nothing but the client-side system, and this implements the client model of DLMS COSAM. So in the client model, we have both sets of the profiles, that is TCP IP as well as the SDLC based profile, so that whether the meter is TCP IP based or the SDLC based, the data can be received from both sets of meters.